These last couple days feel familiar. The Reds all of a sudden forgot their bats. Too early to be worried? We'll talk about it with Mo Egger. Plus,
wasn't hesitant or scared at all, more so just like excited at the opportunity.
leading the charge, some Cincinnati student athletes are helping educate and encourage their peers to get the vaccine. And on the latest episode of Clifton Clifton, UC is now on the hunt for a new head basketball coach. So how did we get here? We'll ask Justin Williams.
From WCPO 9 Sports, this is Sports of All Sorts.
What up? Welcome to Sports of All Sorts. I'm Reggie Wilson. The University of Cincinnati is embroiled with this now former head coach. This thing is more dysfunctional than family group therapy after losing Big Mama. We'll try to make sense of it in a bit, but we start with good vibes only. Kinda. The Reds came into the weekend tearing the laces off the ball, good pitching, even better bats, and the swagger of a winner because they were winning. Then things went left a little bit. Reds trying to get the series win against the D-backs. David Peralta is like, yeah, that's not happening. Takes Jose De Leon deep into the pool, and it's 4-0 in a splash. Luke Dreamweaver had a dream day for Arizona. He carried a no-hitter until the 7th inning. Big yikes. Reds blanked today, 7-0. Still at the top of the division, though, at 6-3. Coach, what's going on with these pitchers?
They were still aggressive in the strike zone, but when any hitters can make you come into the zone and are patient and disciplined, it makes your job as a pitcher a lot more difficult.
My first guest is Mo Egger. Hear him every day on the radio airwaves on ESPN 1530. Mo, thanks for hanging out.
It's good to be with you, Reg. What's up?
Oh, just talking a little baseball with my guy. So the Reds had to cool off eventually, I guess. What concerns you about these back-to-back losses?
The bullpen a little bit, right? A bit of an implosion on Friday night, a bit of an implosion last night. Today, this afternoon, it didn't matter that much. A, the Reds didn't hit. B, Jose De Leon wasn't very effective. But that is going to be a concerning piece to me until there's a sustained level of success by this relief corps, because the reality is they let go this offseason of two pretty good relievers. Raisel Iglesias was fantastic last year, and I watched Josh Van Meter get a hit today for the Diamondbacks. He's a guy they traded for Archie Bradley, who's not here either. They got basically nothing for either guy, and so are there still some capable arms? Sure, Amir Garrett hasn't looked that sharp early, and the guys in the front end of that bullpen, I'm going to need to see more successful individual appearances before I assume that that's going to be a strong point. And the reality is, for a variety of reasons, the starting staff is probably not going to carry as many innings as it did last year. Number one, nobody pitched 180 innings last year, so there's going to be some innings management. Number two, there's just not that much depth in the starting rotation compared to last year. They're going to get Sonny Gray back here soon, and certainly that'll help. But I think they're asking more of a bullpen that is, from top to bottom, probably not as good as last year's. And by the way, last year's bullpen also had its issues.
Yeah, Mo. So, all right, let's do this real quick. Have you seen enough to know who this team is, or is it still too early to tell? We're going to do that.
I think whatever you thought the Reds were going to be 10 days ago, you should still think that. The 5-1 start, the 6-1 start, to me that wasn't enough to make me go, wow, that's going to be a 93-win team. And losing back-to-back games in Arizona certainly isn't enough to make me think this team is going to completely go in the tank. I think they've got a shot to be okay. I think this division's going to be very tightly contested. I am encouraged, though, by the way that so many of the young guys look the part. Tyler Stevenson, Nick Senzel, Jonathan India. Their numbers aren't going to look the way they've looked over the first 9 games a month from now, but those guys look the part. Joey Votto's hitting the ball hard. It hasn't resulted in hits. It hasn't resulted in the kind of production we're looking for. He's hit the ball hard. I worry about Eugenio Suarez. I don't know that 9 games is enough to really give you an idea of what a team is. 9 games is also not enough to make you change your mind. If you thought the Reds were going to be really good before opening day, they're 6-3. You should feel pretty good. If you thought the Reds were going to be terrible, they're 6-3, right? They're probably not going to be terrible. If you're like me, if you're like most, if you thought this team had a shot at being okay, and if you're okay, you're not that far from pretty good, I think you should still feel that way.
All right, Mo, it's a long season, so we'll be talking a lot soon here. I appreciate you taking the time as always.
I just want Great American Ballpark to have a pool. Didn't that look cool?
That was great. I love
Want
that.
a pool.
Let's work on that, Mo.
See what we can do.
All right, so I want to hear your thoughts. How many wins do you think the Reds get this season? Is it too early to start thinking playoffs after this weekend series? Tweet me at Reggie Wilson TV and make sure to use the hashtag SOAS. Well, 2 years ago, John Brannen landed his dream job. Turns out, dreams have a shelf life. Coming up, why he's no longer at the helm in Clifton and what his attorney is saying after his exit. Welcome back. The situation in Clifton is more drama-filled than your favorite soap opera. Where it looked like things were headed over the last month, is now official. John Brannen is out at UC after 2 seasons. The biggest news is that Brannen was fired for cause, according to his attorney, Tom Mars, who claims the university did not want to pay Brannen the $5.25 million to buy out his contract. So to avoid paying the buyout, Brannen's attorney says the university had to find a reason to fire him for cause. He also cited with the chart a budget deficit in the UC athletic department. Mars also says UC fired Brannen before its investigation was complete, and that the school failed to interview a player who spoke publicly in favor of Brannen. He also said Brannen turned down a 7-figure settlement offer made by UC's outside counsel. Juicy stuff. In the university's release, they said in part, the decision comes after a thorough review of our program, which included conversations with student athletes, coaches, and staff, as well as with Coach Brannen. Ultimately, the university is acting in its best interests and our student athletes and the institution. Our next guest has been all over this situation from the very start. Justin Williams from The Athletic. Justin, this thing really unraveled fast. How did we get here where UC is now looking for a new head coach?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of wild. I think the way I wrote it is like it was shocking and then inevitable. Like it seemed like it was happening really quick, and then it got to the point where it felt like it was happening really slow. But it's really been over, at least publicly, over these last 4 weeks. You know, right after the end of the season, they make this kind of unexpected, impressive run to the conference title game in the AAC. Lose to Houston, and then starting that next day, that Monday, first of 6 players went in the transfer portal, and basically over a 3 or 4 day span, you got 6 players going the transfer portal. I reported, I think that Thursday of that week after, that for the most part, that was kind of the product of a rift between at least some of the players and John Brannen. And from there, it's just kind of been this steady dissolving, I guess. You had the university announcing an external review, and basically kind of admitting they had been doing their own internal investigation prior to that. About a week later, they put him on paid administrative leave, and then just under a week after that, he's fired, basically, which is what happened on Friday. And it all kind of stems from, clearly there was a disconnect between coach and players, and depending on who you ask, depending on kind of who you talk to, that disconnect ranges between things that were like, oh, they just didn't get along, to some more serious allegations about just the way they were practicing, or the way the interaction between coach and player. And obviously in the end, based on whatever allegations the university looked into and whatever investigation they did, they ultimately fired John Brannen for cause, which is not a thing anyone does lightly, and certainly is not a situation that's over yet. It certainly seems like there's going to be some amount of legal, judicious battle over this. So yeah, for a season that was definitely difficult for Cincinnati basketball, it was nothing compared to what we've seen the last 4 weeks.
John Brannen released a statement Friday saying it's been an emotional roller coaster and he was disappointed with the decision. His attorney is digging in. Where does he go from here?
Yeah, I mean, you have to imagine it's very tough. And again, kind of, it all depends on who you talk to. But John Brannen certainly does not feel like this was a justified outcome for him. And you see that in him hiring Tom Mars as his lawyer, and in some of the statements from John and Mars over the past week or so, and clearly an intention to to fight this on some level. I mean, his attorney Tom Mars reported that, or claims that John Brandon turned down a 7-figure settlement, kind of throughout this process. So he feels he was wronged in this situation, and he certainly seems like he's going to fight that at least for some amount of time. But yeah, it's all still kind of strange, how quickly, when you do pull back and look at the broad picture, even though the past 4 weeks have felt slow, like this was a complete shocking kind of dissolving departure, divorce, I guess, for lack of a better term, between these two sides. Where John Brandon goes next, I don't know. He's still relatively young. I think he's 45, 46 years old. This was his second head coaching job, coming from Northern Kentucky. He's basically been a basketball lifer, player and coach. So you have to imagine he wants to continue coaching. Now, some of that will depend on how quickly or not quickly this legal battle gets wrapped up and kind of what comes out of that. But I have to imagine, whether it's this coming season or at some point in the future, he gets back into coaching in some capacity, whether that's scouting or as an assistant somewhere. But he's going to have to work his way back, clearly to being a head coach at the college level, if that's what he wants. But we've also seen plenty of examples of, coaches who have done that. So I certainly don't think like his coaching career is over by any stretch, but I think where it goes will depend a lot on how public and loud and lengthy this legal battle is between the two sides.
Where are the Bearcats with the coaching search? With everything we're hearing suggest John Cunningham wants to move fast.
Yeah, I still think that's the case. Everything I've heard is that they would like to move as quickly as possible. I mean, not to ruin the magic of television making, but there's a chance that by the time this airs for people watching it on TV, that we might even know or have a better sense of who that coach is Sunday night. Right now, yeah, I think it's a number of candidates, and you, not exclusively, but you can really kind of look at two sides. There's those that have some tie to the past of Cincinnati basketball. Eric Martin, who played here, coaches under Huggins. Darren Savino, who's an assistant under Mick Cronin. Or there's names like Archie Miller, who, was just fired from Indiana, had coached at Dayton, was an assistant at Ohio State, so clearly familiar with the area. Somebody like Dennis Gates, kind of a young up-and-coming guy who's coaching up at Cleveland State, had a really good year this year, led them to the NCAA tournament. And, I've written this, other people have said this all along, John Cunningham plays things pretty close to the vest at Cincinnati. So it's entirely possible that there are one or maybe even more kind of wild card candidates that have not leaked out there or even been kind of, suggested as possibilities that he's looking into. So I think it's probably more likely that it's a name we've heard or talked about, just on here or in any of the articles that's been out there. But yeah, I think right now it's still ongoing. And even though it's moving quickly, I don't think we have a clear sense right now when you and I are talking of who it's going to be.
Justin, I know it's been a really busy week for you, but I appreciate you taking some time with me tonight. Take care until next time.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I think it'll get resolved here quickly. And that's no complaint on my part on that.
Maceo T got to live out his NCAA tournament dreams and walked out of Indy with a national title. We'll ask our guy Mike Dyer about his conversation with the Walnut Hills grad next. Welcome back. Right now, everyone 16 and up in the tri-state can receive their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. As WCPO sports reporter Mike Dyer shows us, some Cincinnati area student athletes aren't wasting any time to get their first shot.
Walnut Hills High School junior Melanie Mitchell didn't hesitate to sign up last year for a clinical trial of the COVID-19 vaccine. Mitchell, who is a member of the Walnut Hills cheer team, received 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine last year at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center.
I was also passionate about my participation, and I knew it was important that diversity was accounted for. And so I wasn't hesitant or scared at all, more so just like excited at the opportunity. And now, since I've had even more opportunities to educate and encourage teenagers.
The Ohio Department of Health said there is no specific guidance related to vaccinations of student athletes who are at least 16 years old. Dr. Robert Frank, director of the Gamble Vaccine Research Center at Cincinnati Children's, said vaccines will provide more opportunities to have normalcy in sports for teenagers.
We were hoping to get a vaccine that would prevent 70% of hospitalizations. Is that we're getting vaccines that are 95%, which is phenomenal.
Greg Weber and his wife Nikki said they feel confident in deciding to vaccinate their son Elder High School sophomore track runner Tommy Weber. The family made the decision primarily for health reasons.
I don't want to get sick. So regardless of how any of us feel and how anybody feels about the politics of any of this, for the greater good, it's something that, we've chosen and we thought is in for the best interest of us.
Tommy Weber hopes to attend a military academy one day. He may have to provide proof of his vaccine at a camp or group retreat this summer.
What we've put these kids through for this past year, I can't imagine being these kids and having so much taken away from them that, I want to be able to give them their high school experience back because they missed a lot.
Mike Dyer, WCPO 9 Sports.
Well, you just heard my next guest, our high school insider, Mike Dyer. Mike, thanks so much for joining me. Very fascinating topic right now with everyone. What did you learn from your time doing this story?
Reggie, it was really interesting. A lot of focus has been on these age groups. Obviously, as Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana have rolled out the vaccine distribution. But I was curious from a high school sports standpoint, what this meant for some of the athletes who are currently participating in interscholastic athletics. And, 16 and 17-year-olds in Ohio are eligible for the Pfizer vaccine. And, I kind of wondered, will these families of these student athletes be in support of this, considering you've heard about side effects, obviously, after first or second doses. And, I posted something on our Cincinnati area high school sports Facebook group, and I got a lot of responses, actually, a lot of families who were open to talking about this. And, those from spring sports to fall sports. Every family came back and that I communicated with and was very much in support of this, not only for their student athletes and for sports perspective, but just for health reasons for the families and being able to visit, relatives and grandparents and that sort of thing.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit. Former Walnut Hills standout Maceo Teague capped quite the ride this past week. He started his basketball career at UNC Asheville and ended up at Baylor. Decided to come back for this season, and he fulfilled a dream, winning a national championship. You talked to him after. What was that conversation like?
You know what? I've really gotten close to knowing Maceo through covering him back in his Walnut Hills high school days, and 2015 graduate. And as you mentioned, just a unique journey. Really wasn't highly recruited out of high school, and just really carved his own path. And he even kind of mentioned on social media, everybody has their own journey. And a lot of people may forget that he broke his wrist actually last year, and had to come back and kind of find his shooting form again. And this was with his dominant hand too. So I kind of tested the NBA waters, interviewed with about a dozen teams last year. And as you mentioned, Reggie, just an opportunity to play with a very, very talented Baylor Bears team. And, Coach Ricardo Hill over there at Walnut Hills told me even last year when everything was canceled with the NCAA tournament due to the pandemic, he said it would have been such a special moment or special journey to watch Baylor make a deep run. And lo and behold, I mean, fortunately for Maceo and all his supporters and fans here in the Cincinnati area, you got to see that, because it was really a great story for a guy who's put in so much work, and would stay late in gyms, even during his high school career, come back after games and just be in the gym and practice. And I texted Coach Ricardo Hill this week, and we talked on Zoom, and I said, what's kind of the next step for him, with the NBA and the evaluation process. I said, when's he gonna, start working out again? And he texted back immediately, he'll be in the gym tomorrow. So Maceo and his family enjoyed all this, but it's going to be back to business before you know it.
Lastly, Mike, Jeremiah Davenport endured an unimaginable loss this past week with the passing of his father, Darren. Keenan Singleton just did a story with the whole family about a month ago. You got a chance to talk to several people about this loss. What's the post there?
Darren Davenport's legacy, Reggie, goes beyond basketball, whether it be coaching at the AAU level, officiating like he did for a long time. Just a man of true faith and a family man. I mean, Joe Frederick, the Covington Catholic assistant coach, kind of told me, he says, it's just the way he went about everyday life. There was, no pretenses. I mean, you tell the truth, tell it like it is. Was just a very good friend and advocate for the basketball community around Cincinnati. But first and foremost, as Moeller coach Carl Kramer told me, it was about his family. And that was so near and dear to his heart. I mean, it's well chronicled, as you mentioned, what our colleague Kean Singleton did the story about how many Division I level college basketball players, including himself and his wife Sheila. Darren's legacy is certainly going to continue to be in the hearts and minds of everybody who follows Cincinnati basketball.
All right, Mike, always appreciate your insight and candor. Thanks so much for taking the time again.
Thank you, Reggie. Appreciate the opportunity.
We'll be right back to wrap up the show. Welcome back. Well, it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun, but we got to go. I'd like to thank my guests Mo Egger, Justin Williams, and Mike Dyer for joining me tonight. And thank you to my village who helped me put this all together. Thank you for watching. Let's do it again next Sunday. Until then, have a good night and a very blessed week.